I actually played back a little bit of the recording because I was going to go back and, make some notes and expand on what I'd said in the stream, and I realized that I'd had a compressor on, and unfortunately, it was making my voice really clipped, and it was bothering me, and I was sitting there thinking, well, crap, if there's anyone that actually wants to watch this and it bothers them, that could really be, annoying. Um, So I'm just gonna go ahead and redo this real fast. It's an hour-long stream. I don't think that anyone's. I would be very surprised if someone just randomly shows up. But I'm just gonna go through this really fast just so that I can give you guys a little bit better audio quality. I'm literally just sitting in my bed with my dog Ollie. Thankfully, I didn't have much to do other than rebandaging my poor finger, which is definitely bruised now. I guess you guys won't see the original video. But pretty much I ended up having to go to the ER because I got bit while striking up a dog fight. Um, it was my dog and a much larger dog, so I'm glad that it was Ollie that bit me. I didn't realize until later that the reason that he bit me is that he was actually hurt by the other dogs. So, and he also, I genuinely don't think that he realized that it was me that was grabbing him because he was between the other owner's legs, and the other owner, he's like probably in his 70s. So I was like, okay, that's really bad if he falls. So I kind of grabbed Ollie, and he couldn't see me because his head was on the other side of the guy's legs. So he just, and it's my fault. I know better than to grab a dog during a dog fight, but it was one of those that um I was willing to take the risk of getting bitten, and I got bit, and my finger is super bruised. It's still numb. Thankfully, it's not broken, but yeah, it was. I'm just glad that Ollie didn't start the fight. It was not Ollie. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through this pretty quickly. And if I don't answer one of your questions, I definitely will in the future because this was a lot easier, especially because some of these I will actually make a post. I will actually expand on what I'm gonna say in a post, but this has just been easier. So if you end up watching this video or future videos, if nothing else, you're getting a sneak peek at what some of the upcoming posts are going to be. And you just get a little bit of extra thoughts. There are probably things that I'll say in here that I don't end up putting in any posts, mainly when it has to do with psychology. But okay, let's start with Jason Voorhees. Uh, what would happen if I think they meant multiple slashers, but what would happen if their significant other ended up getting kidnapped or were put in serious danger? Um, so I actually wrote a post about this for Jason, that I thought I posted it, but maybe I didn't. Maybe it's just sitting in my drafts. Where you know how I kind of wrote a few posts about what would he do if his future significant other were his neighbor and the neighbor was taking care of their grandmother who has Alzheimer's. So it's that same version of the reader that essentially gets kidnapped by an intense Voorhees fan that decides, well, if I give you to Jason, and I kind of like, oh, I caught you going on his land, so kind of the ultimate snitch. Maybe Jason will actually accept me, and it doesn't end well. Jason's not too thrilled about it because at that time he definitely considers the reader, if nothing else, a friend. He has some more feelings, um, which at the beginning of the post he's actually picking flowers for the reader. But yeah, he doesn't respond well to someone endangering the reader because the reader is just sitting there tied up next to a tree, like, sup, hey Jason, like, what's up? Didn't expect to see you here, you know. Um, so Jason essentially how he would respond to, especially his current significant other, but also future significant other being in danger, would not be happy about it. I don't think any of them would be particularly happy about it. Who would be? But Jason would be afraid at first, but once he made sure that you were safe, he would be very angry because he's already lost someone that he cares very deeply about at a time where he wasn't physically strong enough to protect them. You know, he lost his mom right before his eyes. So that would definitely trigger. I think that Jason has PTSD. I also think that he's autistic. I'll probably talk. I think I'll talk about this later in this video. But yeah, he would not respond well to someone threatening someone that he cares about because he has very few people um, in his life. So it would be death to whoever was endangering you. Anyone that endangered for all these slashers, it would be an immediate death sentence. For Brahms, it would be more of a possessive thing. Um, but he also, I will get into. I think that Brahms has borderline personality disorder, and I will get into that. But for now, I will say, you know, people with borderline personality disorder are not dangerous monsters. You know, people with any mental illness they're 10 times more likely to be the victims of abuse. Um, Very unlikely to be abusers. Can issues with emotional regulation arise? Yeah, that can be something in BPD. But, the real victim in that type of situation are the people that are suffering themselves. Thankfully, there is treatment for BPD. And, if you're suffering with BPD, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I genuinely hope the best for you. You can get help. It's a modified version of cognitive behavioral therapy that was created by someone who did suffer from BPD, and they created this to help people, and it has been shown to work. The name escapes me, but if you just Google BPD treatment, it's a therapeutic treatment, modified version of CBT. Genuinely, there is help, and there are people out there who support you. But for now, I'm just gonna say, Brahms is terrified of losing people, especially after his parents. He's terrified of abandonment, whether that abandonment is willing or not. So the idea of someone potentially taking his significant other away from him, it would be like animalistic frenzied. Probably he would be like screaming, like not even words, just animalistic screaming. It would be intense. He would not react well. Thomas is used to having loved ones in danger just by the nature of kind of how the whole cannibalism thing works. Does that mean that he's going to respond well to someone endangering his significant other? Absolutely not. He's going to kill them, and he's going to make. They're going to be in pain while he does it. Yautja, obviously, it's not as much because it really wouldn't. You wouldn't be as likely to be kidnapped because your mate would definitely train you. But I mean, they would definitely comfort you. They're not gonna be like, "Well, you got kidnapped. Clearly, you aren't tough enough. I discard you now." It wouldn't be that type of situation. Michael, though, Michael is the one that would be the most surprising because it would be an immediate protecting type of instinct that would not only take him by surprise afterward, but you'd be sitting there in the moment like, oh my god, like you are very passionate about protecting me right now. Like clearly there are some emotions that you have for me that I missed, and like, okay, okay. But afterwards it would be very, very awkward. It would just be awkward silence because neither of you would really be making eye contact. It'd just be this like elephant in the room that's like, okay, he's not going to acknowledge it. You kind of know better than to. No, you're just like, okay, so it's just kind of a fact now that if I'm in danger, you're going to protect me. cool, cool, you know? Uh, and if they died, I mean, they'd all be crushed. They'd all be crushed. Michael would try and pretend like he's not crushed, but he'd be crushed. He'd eventually break down, crying. Um, so for Jason, but again, I'm gonna do all of them. His reaction to their significant other coming out as a trans man. I'm just gonna do this, and also this post on here, coming out as bi. The thing is, the slashers really weren't raised around homophobia or especially not transphobia, because if you look at, except for Bronze, I'll talk about Webb. Bronze is a special case, but Jason, especially Thomas, um, and Michael, the time period, the time that these movies came out and that they're written, um, trans people really weren't talked about as much. So it really wasn't a political issue at the time. So they wouldn't have any preconceived notions or pre-developed biases against trans people. So they would just kind of be like, "Oh, cool! Like I didn't know that this was something exists necessarily, but cool." It'd kind of be like, like the first time I found out that pit bulls can get allergies, I was just like, "Oh, okay." Like there's really no judgment because I, it's just a fact. Like they wouldn't debate it or anything. It's just a fact. Uh, the only reason why I'm saying like Bronze is a special case is because he's a more modern slasher. Um, but as I mentioned, I think I did a whole post devoted to this. He has not had any discussion about sex whatsoever. To the point that, I mean, if you rewatch the movie The Boy, you can see that his parents clearly didn't think that he would ever have sexual urges or desires or thoughts. And that's what makes them so deeply uncomfortable and so freaked out, is because they were not prepared for that. Um, so, if sex itself isn't even being talked about and isn't even being brought up, sexual orientation definitely isn't being talked about. And if neither of those things are being talked about, it's not like he's being taught homophobia or transphobia. So I don't. That's why I think all of these slashers, if they're not part of the LGBTQ themselves, um, they would definitely be allies. Oh no, I thought it was gonna go back. Yeah. Do I think that Jason could get someone pregnant? I can see that you don't want him to. I like to think he can't. Um, Here's my very diplomatic answer. I don't think he can for the moment. But if you wanted to change that, I think Mama Voorhees could definitely help with some of her special magic, as it were. So that's just a really quick response. That's one of those examples of like, it really wouldn't need a post to answer that one. The slashers, Jason specifically, but the slashers whose SO has telekinesis. Jason would. Now this has nothing to do with gender. Jason would be very protective of you, no matter what. Mainly because again he lost his mother because in his mind he wasn't physically strong enough, and he wasn't there. He found his mother dead. He was too late. It's something that he has definitely. He shows all the symptoms of PTSD. Um, I can make a post if you guys want, but I mean, definitely he does. And so he would be protective of you. And the first time, you use your telekinesis and you show him, like, no, I can hold my own, I'm fine. He would do like a double take at you. Like, you'd fling someone away from him, and he just kind of like, genuine, just like a double take down at you. Like, what? Where did that come from? Like, what? But I mean, he'd be like, okay, okay, and he would just run with it. He'd be like, okay, cool. Um, Brahms would be turned on, and he'd probably want you to use it in the bedroom, and then he'd also probably want to know if you can pick him up and make him fly in the air. I think he'd be very into that. Letta May would also be into that. Not the first part, but the flying in the air, she would definitely be into that. Um, Tommy, I think a part of him would be relieved because he'd be like, oh, thank goodness, like, not that he didn't think, but like anything, any extra thing that can protect you, he's like, yeah, yeah. Um, I think he'd also be a little bit intimidated though. He'd be like, because he's used to being, you know, the biggest fish in the pond when it comes to strength, and he's like, oh shit, what is this? The Yautja would think it's super cool. They'd probably think of ways that you can use it, and they'd probably think of like unexpected ways in which you could use it. Michael, he would actually probably distrust you for a bit, mainly because Michael's whole thing is that he hates feeling controlled, and I think he probably has a fear of feeling powerless, um, especially after so many years in Haddonfield or Haddonford. Oh my gosh, I'm really bad with names. Um, so many years in mental institution. So he would kind of keep his eyes on you because he wouldn't be comfortable with the fact that you could easily overpower him. That would be something that, yeah, he'd have to learn to trust that you're not going to use that against him, that you're not going to hurt him, because anyone that has had power over him has used it against him in his life. Okay, Brahms. He only has one. He only has one. You guys are very obvious with your favorites, I must say. Because, I mean, look, so you got Michael Myers, you got Jason, you got Brahms, you got Thomas, and then look at the Yautja. All the Yautja questions. But Brahms, what would Brahms do if the reader baby talked to him in their native language? Check. How would he react? I mean, this is Brahmsy. This is Brahmsy. Did you not see how part of the reason why he acts like Brahmsy and stuff is it is manipulation. Um, he uses the fact that he is infantilized to his advantage. If you were being respectful and you're not being condescending, I think he would actually like it, and I think that he'd find it very, very endearing. Um, I think it'd be like, baby boy, daddy Dahmer, baby boy, mommy dearest type of situation. Yautja, as long as it's in private and it's not in front of other Yautja that'll consider it weakness, they're fine with it. They wouldn't mind. Michael will stab you. Like, just absolutely not with Michael. And then, unfortunately, I am going to say with Thomas and Jason, they would not appreciate baby talk necessarily for the sole reason that they are both disabled, which means that, people with disabilities a lot of times have to deal with being infantilized, which means, being treated kind of like children. And Jason and Thomas were definitely treated that way. Were definitely treated like they were younger, like they didn't understand things. Um, so this might remind them of the times that they've had to deal with ableism, especially Tommy, because people have called him the R word. He's been treated like he's slow, which I really don't think he is. I think that he didn't have access to education. I think his brain just works differently. Out of the slashers, Jason and Thomas are the two that I could really see being, especially Jason, but I could potentially see Thomas being on the spectrum. I'd have to look into that more. He shows some signs, but that could also be other things that are causing it. But Jason especially, I'll have to do a post about why I could see it with Jason. Um, let's see. Have you ever considered turning the matchmaking series into a full story? Yes, it's kind of my plan. Um, I don't know if you've noticed in my post. Like, let me find a post. Okay, so you can see that I have actually. Let me just go to the actual blog because it's more clear. Like on the blog, if you notice, you can really see like the ADHD kind of coming out, where I don't write very long. Like this is a little blurb. This is a little blurb. This is a little blurb. You know, and it's like blurb and then another blurb, and then all those things add up to one single blurb, and it's very I'm kind of jumping around a lot when I'm making them. Like you can see here, like oh, here's one, and like I jump to different aspects of the thing. Um, so and then compared to this, like you can even see it with this. It's like okay, this is one, and then I do a time skip, and then there's another time skip, and then another time skip. So I really struggle staying focused. That has more to do with just real life, the medication that I would take for ADHD. It worsens my depression. So I can choose to manage my ADHD or my depression. I chose to manage my depression, but long way of saying yes. I'm gonna be writing more little blurbs, and the goal is to eventually it'll all kind of add up to a coherent story. That's why on the master list. Sorry, on the master list, it's in chronological order because eventually it will all kind of be condensed um into a full story. I hope that answered it. How would Tommy and the Huge react to Tommy's significant other being vegan? I feel so bad because you said you love my writing, and then there's this adorable. I'm actually gonna change the color of this because it's so darn cute. Oh no, I did it wrong. Hold on. This deserves. Look at it, it's so darn cute. And I'm just gonna crush this poor person. I'm so sorry. There's a reason why some of these requests I really don't respond to because I know they would hurt people's feelings. But there is a legitimate reason why they would not respond well to a vegan reader, and that has to do with continuing the cycle of abuse and technically generational trauma, but definitely continuing the cycle of abuse. Because to them, it's not about you're vegan, you've made this choice, this is something that you believe in. To them, especially you can see this with Loda May, it is about the fact that, she was forced by Hoyt to become a cannibal. That's pretty apparent if you watch uh, TCM the beginning. That she was not okay with becoming a cannibal, but she felt like she was forced to do that. So because she was not allowed to be vulnerable, she was forced to be strong. She was forced to just suck it up. She can't really tolerate other people not sucking it up when it comes to food. She's had to eat rotting meat. That's shown at the very beginning of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, that she's going in the dumpster looking for meat that's rotten, but not too rotten, that's still edible. So for her, it's kind of like if a parent, if there's a kid that they skin their knee and the parent's like, oh, why are you crying about, like, suck it up? It's not, it has nothing to do with the kid. It's about the fact that when they were a child, they were forced to suck up when they were hurt. So it's when they see like, oh, this person's vegan, they don't want to be forced to do this. They're forced to confront the fact that there was an injustice done to them, and that can be very painful, and that's why the cycle is often repeated, because it's very painful to acknowledge that this is something that was done to me, this is something that should not have been done to me. I don't get to be vulnerable like this person gets to be vulnerable, and that's not fair. And, that's why breaking the cycle is a very difficult thing. It's a very noble thing, but it's also very difficult. I still love this though. I still love this. Like, it's so cute. Um, what do I think would happen to Bailey if she didn't try and escape? This is another thing that really has to do with psychology. I would argue that the reason why nothing would change is because of a phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. Basically, in social psychology, um, there's kind of a theory that posits that most people want to be able to believe two things about themselves. And will go to extreme lengths to be able to say these two things about themselves. They want to believe, one, that the way that they're perceiving reality, perceiving events, is accurate. So, if you're being bullied, if you think, or let me put it this way, if you think you're being bullied, you want to be able to believe that your perception that you're being bullied is accurate to reality, that you really are being bullied if you think you're being bullied. And then the second one is you want to believe that you're a good person. That's why villains never think that they're the bad guy. Hitler did not think that he was a bad guy. That's what makes bad guys so dangerous, is because they genuinely believe in what they're doing. Um, you know, that's why abusers a lot of the times will not apologize for having abused you, because a lot of times they don't see that they're the bad guy. It's painful and very, very uncomfortable to go through cognitive dissonance. Just like it's painful and difficult to break a cycle of abuse. And for Bailey's abuse to end, Hoyt would have to acknowledge that, one, she's a human being. She's not just a toy that he's going to play with and he's going to abuse. And two, he has to acknowledge that he did horrific things to another human being that has value and worth just like him. And that would throw him in cognitive dissonance, where he would have to acknowledge, I'm not a good person. And that would probably spiral into him looking at some of his other actions and saying, like, oh shit, I'm not a good person. So I think it would be incredibly unlikely for him to do that, because he has no motivation to do that. He has far more motivation to just keep doing what he's doing. I'm sorry for these last two. I know that they're very sad. Okay, so onto the multiple slashers. How would slashers and react to their significant other being a vampire? I get this a lot, actually. This and werewolves, which I might include in the next video about werewolves. So Jason would probably build you, like, underground tunnels. He'd make sure that you have, like, plenty of space to move around during the day, because I'm assuming this is, like, Dracula style, where you burn in the sun, not the Twilight where you sparkle type. So he'd make sure that you're protected. Brahms actually is the one that is the most fascinating, because he would feel a very strong sense of kinship, I think, as a burn victim himself. The idea that if you even touch, a shaft of light, you catch on fire, he would feel a lot of sympathy for you. And he'd be like, at least I can go out in the sunlight. Like, this poor person is constantly at risk for being burned alive, like, all the time. So the fact that, during the day, you have to stay hidden, you have to stay locked up, you can't just go out freely and do what you want. He would very much relate to that, and I think that would be something that would really win him over. He would be very kind to you about that. He would want to find ways to make things easier on you. For the Hewitts, I don't know. I don't know how long you would actually stay alive with the Hewitts if you were a vampire. Mainly because if you watch the films, the captives really make a muck of the house. So I think there's a definite possibility that you would end up dying via sunlight. Or you would just stay in the basement with Thomas during the day, and he would just end up working during the day or sleeping during the day. But you definitely probably wouldn't want to be upstairs at all. the Yautja would think it's cool because they're like, oh my gosh, you were human and now you're this creature that can prey on humans. They would not be a fan of you if you preyed on innocent humans. They would 100% kill you because they have a code of honor, and they would consider those types of kills dishonorable. And then Michael Myers, I think that he'd actually like that. I think he'd, again, like Bronze, feel kinship, but for a different reason. Mainly because this is someone who their very nature is that they have to kill. And he probably feels like his nature is that killing is part of his nature. Being that predator is part of his nature. So he'd kind of maybe feel acceptance, you know? Uh, oh, I missed this one completely. Uh, so how would the slashers react to their significant other being asexual? Um, it would literally just be the same relationship, but without sex. Um, Thomas is probably the only one that, because of the whole what goes down the matchmaking series or the matchmaker series, there'd be a few times where you'd kind of have to. Um, and I do want to make it clear that Tommy doesn't want to do that either. His thing, I really need to write because I got a request for someone to please write the like fuck 'em or die scene. And in it, I will make it very clear that Tommy, the only reason he does it is because you will die otherwise, and he doesn't really feel like you deserve to die. So he's a victim in that too. And that's kind of why you bond. It's a little bit of trauma bonding, which is not good. Trauma bonding is not good. Um, or I should say, it's not really the best foundation for a relationship. Just because, it can make you feel things that aren't necessarily warranted, or, I can get into it if you want, but I'd prefer not to. Um, yes. Where, oh my gosh, where was I? Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Oh yeah, but everyone else, it would genuinely just be like, you'd still have the emotional intimacy. Um, I'm going to be honest, the only one that would have a serious problem is this one right here. This one, because his love language is touch. He is so touch starved that I don't think that realistically that would really work out with Brahms. Um, he's also the only slasher that has committed sexual assault. If you watch the movie, he does assault Greta. That again has to go with the fact that he has absolutely no sex education, so he probably thinks it's freaking. I did a whole post on this, like why he thought that it was okay to force himself on Greta like that. If you want to look, I pretty much talk about the fact that his only sex ed would have been like vintage books that were written by men. So not the best. Um, a significant other who has body hair. Again, this has to do with lack of exposure to like prejudices and you know uh, misogyny. Because let's be honest, it's. I mean, yeah, I would say that it's misogyny that makes it where it's like, oh, if you're a woman, I'm assuming woman in this, because at least where I live, it's women that are told that they have to shave their legs. They're not really exposed to that. I don't think any of the slashers would really know the difference. I don't think they realize that that's something they're supposed to be grossed out about. Um, I mean, Brahms is most likely to be aware of the concept of women shave their legs, but he's just happy to be there. I don't think he's gonna be like, "Hey, I know that I'm like desperate for touch, but would you mind shaving your legs?" He's not gonna pull that. Jason does not care because yeah, it's just natural. It's body hair. Thomas would feel the same way. The Yautja would think that it's honestly ridiculous that some humans are told to shave their hair because, in their mind, there's an evolutionary reason for that. So why would you get rid of something that's there for a reason? And then Michael again, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. So if you're someone that likes to have their body hair, don't feel like you have to shave for the slashers, okay? Don't feel like that's something you have to do. Or if you want to be like, ooh, I love the idea of like Thomas shaving my legs for me and like this very sexy thing, he'd do it. It'd be cute if you want. How will the slashers react to a significant other that is also a killer but uses victims to indulge in art? Jason would be a little bit taken aback. But he'd be like, I guess it's like arts and crafts. Cool, like, sure. He has the shrine to his mom. He can't really judge. Brahms would be into it. He would want to do that. You know how there's like that thing where you can spread paint on like a veggie and then like you have sex and it makes art? That's what he would want to do, but like with blood or something. Thomas, he already makes art out of stuff, and quite frankly, the Hewitts would actually really respect the fact that you're doing a slasher version of nose to tail eating, which essentially means that you're not wasting anything. They would really respect that. Lutta May would be like, teach me your ways, this is amazing. The Yautja would feel the same way. They'd be like, oh, that's really cool. They probably make art out of their trophies as well. And then Michael, he'd be like, wow, there's someone that's like, this is. Michael has an arty side, so I think that he'd actually get into it. You guys be like silently making arts and crafts together. Let me see here. Let me see. I keep missing where I am. Realizing for the first time that this one right here, that they like being intimate with their significant other. The only one that I'm going to say this applies to, because this kind of implies that the slashers are having sex, without enjoying it, as in like without consent. So the only one that this applies to is Thomas, and he would realize that he's actually starting to enjoy himself when he sees you responding to him. Like, if you're moaning or if you're arching into him, that's when he actually starts to enjoy himself. I have gotten this so many times. So many times. The one who okay, so Yautja, they'd be totally into it. They're very much into rough sex. Michael, he's dominant, so he would very much enjoy it. He would be intense about it though. He would want to leave marks. The idea of leaving marks on you, Michael is into. Jason would probably be very mortified and uncomfortable at first. I think that eventually you could probably get him comfortable with it, but it would take a lot to kind of warm him up to it. Thomas is kind of the same way, but not to the same extent as Jason. Mainly because, Hoyt likes to spank. So that's what he would be reminded of. That being said, if it's something that makes you happy and it brings you pleasure, Tommy's all for that. He's got a praise king. He just wants to feel like he's doing a good job. This one, though, he would. Oh my god. First of all, Brahms is bi. I refuse to accept anything other than that. So, spanking Brahms, I think that he'd be into it. But also, him spanking you, it would not just. It would not be a bedroom only thing. Are you making a sandwich? He's going to come up and spank you just to see your reaction. Because he's a stinker like that. A significant other with motor tics and general twitching. I can totally relate to this. I have benign tremors, which, not to this extent. But I'm just going to do a blanket statement for disabilities. They would treat you like a person, which, I mean, the only difference would be that if you need accommodations, especially with Jason Thomas, but like all of them, if there's like accommodations that you kind of need or help that you kind of need, they would give that to you. But that would be the only difference. For example, like I know that when my blood pressure goes really low because I have POTS, my tremors get a lot worse. And if I'm struggling to open, say like a water bottle, um, in that situation, like this, they would come up and help. But other than that, you know, they would just treat you like a normal person because you are a normal person. Uh, a significant other that's really quiet in bed. For this, Michael's really quiet himself, so he's not. Again, like they really don't have any sex ed, so they haven't been exposed to porn, which is kind of the reason why people expect lots of noise and moaning and like a lot of show. Which, if you naturally are loud, you know, just do what comes naturally to you. Don't feel like you have to put on a show or do anything that doesn't make you feel good. And I mean, I think that would be a good rule to follow for everyone. But just be you. Uh, yeah, I don't think any of them would have a problem with you being quiet in bed. Brahms would probably, if you make little noises, he would do his darndest to make you louder. He would try and like force you to be louder just by like giving you that much enjoyment. Um, but this is a different, and I knew I could see that there was a difference, and I only just noticed that. Excuse me. Okay, there we go. That was bothering me. The only one we're definitely gonna be loud are these guys right here, because they don't do light sex. It's intense. There will be sound that will be made, and that's just how it's gonna be. Let's see. The slushers with a heavily pregnant significant other. Uh, that's one of those where they're just gonna be really pretty. I might do a post about this one actually. Um, give me a moment actually, because I need to refill Ollie's water bowl. I shall be back in just a moment. Okay, I'm back. I would apologize for being unprofessional, but it's not like I'm getting paid for this. Uh, okay, how would the Yacha respond to their mate being able to do necromancy? They would think it's the coolest thing ever. They would look at all of the the tactical advantages. They'd probably brag to their friends about it. Like, yeah, my mate is overwhelmed by a whole bunch of enemies. They just kill a couple and then they can rise them from the dead and they'll fight on their behalf. Super cool. How would the Yacha respond to um their mate having trophies, except the trophies are origami? Pretty much they would see it as you're dexterous. Uh, you you will probably be really good with traps, so they would probably teach you how to make all these really intricate traps and just see how you go with it. I like this one because it's so specific. Uh, someone who does these sorts of things interesting. My mom sleepwalks too, and it's interesting to say the least. How would they react to um their significant other making a small nest in the corner of the ship while sleep talking? They would just kind of tell their head to the side and be like, "What? What is going on here?" Okay. Like they just kind of watch and be like, okay. Um, Mainly they would just do, how humans tend to do when they have someone that they care about the sleepwalks. Make sure that they aren't able to get a hold of anything that's going to hurt them. Make sure that the doors are locked so that they can't get out. Um, I guess my mom, when she was younger, she used to leave the house, and I know that that's pretty common for sleepwalking. If you have a Yautja hound, it would be specially tasked with making sure that you don't hurt yourself, and it would take that task very seriously because it's a good pupper. Uh, for the Yautja, how would they respond to a significant other who has hypertrophic scarring or just like really thick raised scars? The Yautja are very attracted to scars. They see it as, wow, you have been out in the world. Oliver! What? What, Oliver? What's going on? Are we safe? Oh, you're very brave. Yeah, you're very brave. Do you want to come up? What? Don't jump on my computer, silly. You are a silly boy. You're very silly. Um, the Yautja, sorry about that. Yautja really like scars. They're very attracted to them. They consider them proof that you have good survival instincts and you're, durable. You're resilient. So the more dramatic the scars, the better to Yautja. Um, oh, was that a grumble? Was that a grumbly groan? Oh, the huffing has begun. That's when Ollie huffs about stuff. How would a Yautja react to them and their mate getting separated on a planet trying to find each other? So there would already be a plan in place for if this happened because Yautja are nothing if not prepared. Um, they would have a little tracking thing that you would wear, but if for some reason it got broke or you forgot to put it on or it got torn off or something, they would have a plan in place. Like, okay, on this planet, you climb a tree when it starts to get dark because there's stuff that comes out that will try to eat you. And they'd just be running around trying to find you, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, gosh darn it. But they would be very proud of you when they kind of run past your tree and you call down and you're like, hey, I'm up here. Like, please take me home. They 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 wouldn't they would be telling themselves like, I trained them well. Like it'll be okay. It'll be okay. How would the Yautja respond like when their mates in labor? Typically, the male isn't even around because that's not how Yautja society works. But if you are like, I want my mate in the delivery room with me, they're gonna let it happen. I mean, they're still like the females are still gonna be like, I mean, we're better than you still. Not you. We're better than your mate if your mate's male. But your partner would just be like cheering you on, very proud of you because they consider childbirth to be the equivalent of a blooding. And once you're blooded, it's like you were very respected. So they'd mainly just be very proud of you. How would they react to their significant other being an employee at Jurassic World and being the main caretaker of Rexy? I'm gonna take this as a step further and say that being a caretaker of Rexy involves, even if it's a small degree, some degree of having that T Rex trained. To which the Yautja would think you are a god among men. They'd be like, "You are amazing. How did you do this?" Also, follow up question: can we train this T Rex to go into battle for us? Because that would be amazing. That's where their thought would go. And they would want to know if they can get little war dinos. What would the relationship be between a predator and an artist? Um, it would be the same as like a human and art. They would be curious. They would just kind of curiously watch you while you're drawing. Um, just, you know, typically when someone's making art, people like to watch and like to see how things are going to unfold. So it would be the same as that. This one, how do you separate the predator? I'm assuming that they're asking, how do you tell the character, like, different Yacha apart? Which, I mean, the short answer is you don't, because there's only, I think, like, one or two Yacha that actually have names in the movies. Like, Scar is the most iconic one. But other than that, like, each movie is just Predator 1, you know? Like, Yatsu and Sinnoh are, I just made them up. Which is usually, that's kind of just how it works in fan fiction. There's not actually legitimate uh, Yautja that have been named. That it doesn't kind of work that way in the movies. It'd be interesting if it did, but it doesn't. Okay, last bit. Michael Myers. What would I do if Michael Myers was messaging people online and I didn't like it? Michael is not. Michael is many things, but he's not a cheater. So I genuinely don't think that this would happen. The reason why I don't think Michael's a cheater and I say it with such certainty is because from a psychological perspective, people cheat in general when there is something in the relationship that they're not, like, there is a need or want in the relationship that is not being fulfilled by their partner, so they look elsewhere to get that need met. And Michael has very low needs. He's like the snake plant of slashers. He really doesn't need much. You can just shove him in a corner and water him like every 2 weeks. He's good. Brahms, however, if anyone's gonna cheat, it's gonna be Brahms. Um, it's gonna be Brahms. Um, because he's a needy boy who has needs that need to be met. And there's also that chance, just, with the BPD, that if you're going through a rough patch, he might do something impulsive. Um, that's not to say that because of BPD, that people with BPD are cheaters. Um, Not at all. Brahms doesn't have sex ed. He doesn't have relationship ed. Um, I mean, he's very manipulative, which that's not a BPD thing. That's a Brahms thing. Like, I really want to be clear that because I know that there's a stereotype that people with BPD are bad people, and that is not true. I would say it's more accurate to say that people with BPD are people that are in pain, that just really desperately want to be loved, want to have those types of needs met, but are also terrified of abandonment. And unfortunately, the fact that those needs have not been met, and the fact that they're so afraid of abandonment, can lead to behavior that kind of forces abandonment or can cause them to have, unstable relationships that, kind of come and go. But it comes from a place of desperately wanting that acceptance, which, again, if you're struggling with BPD, oh no, am I being hacked? If you're struggling with BPD, there is help that you can get. Just know that, I 100% support you. There are people out there that definitely support you. Okay, and the last one. How would Michael feel about their significant other giving birth in a hospital, or would he insist that they give birth at home? He would want them to give birth at home. I am actually going to say, though, that I genuinely don't think that Michael would ever want to have children. But if it's one of those situations, he would want you to give birth at home, not because of a control thing, not because of a he hates people thing. because of a medical trauma thing. You know, you gotta remember that um, he spent decades, he spent a very long time in a mental institution that did not treat him well. Um, so the idea of being around medical professionals, I don't think, you know, he wouldn't trust them. He genuinely would not trust them. He would be afraid that something's going to happen, that, you know, what if they lock you up? What if they lock him up? What if they take the baby? Those would be legitimate concerns born out of trauma. Um, I thought there was one that I talked about in the original stream, but I guess I already covered it. But yeah, I guess, yeah, just seriously with BPD, don't be shitbags to people with BPD. Um, Jason, potentially autistic. Thomas, as usual, he is the golden child. Ain't no problems with Thomas. Yautja, amazing as always. Michael, scary, yet still amazing as always. Hopefully, the audio actually came out well this time. Because seriously, it was just cutting in and out, and it sounded awful. So I figured, you know, why not? Why not just run through again? Um, but yeah, that should be all. Uh, I hope that you guys enjoyed just getting some of these questions answered. Oh my goodness. And I'll probably do this again just because it's a really fast way to go through quite a bit of questions. Um, thank you so much and bye bye.